So we all know that it's replaced, many taxes like excise duty, service tax, sales tax, VAT, octroi. So these were all levied earlier by central government and the state government. So these were, abolished, all the other taxations, indirect taxation, and GST came into in 2017, and which is applicable to whole of India. Some of the important provisions of GST Act in India are, so we're going to cover them. So first is regarding the registration. So businesses with turnover of more than 20 lakhs, rupees 10 lakhs for businesses in northeastern states are required to register under GST Act. So this was, and there is some amendment to it later on. Okay. Originally it was all the people who are having 20 lakhs of turnover for any goods and services they are providing. They are doing a business where they are providing any goods or services. So they have to register after their turnover crosses 20 lakhs or 20 lakhs and above. Okay. And for some hilly areas and northern hilly states, it is 10 lakhs. Okay. Now, of course, there is, a certain change. So it talks about, what should be the aggregate turnover and when it is required, registration required, and, on which date it became applicable. So earlier limit for sale of goods and providing services. So either you are a provider of goods or you are provider of services. Okay. So if it exceeds 20 lakhs, uh, or then exceeds 10 lakhs. So in that case, registration is compulsory. Normal category for 20 lakhs, it is for all the states, and for 10 lakhs, it is special category states, mainly northeastern part of India and hilly areas of India. So this provision came into effect from 31st of March 2019. Now the new limits are for sale of goods. Okay, so there, registration was, there was only one provision for sale and goods, and sale of services it was 20 and 10. Now for sale of goods, the limit is 40 lakhs. Okay, for normal category states, and for the special category states, it is 20 lakhs.
So that means the services remains at 20 lakhs and the goods have gone to
40 lakhs. Yeah, absolutely. No, he's saying, sorry, this provision, just understand, it is, for, if you look at for goods, it was 20 and 10. Now it has become 40 and 20.
That's right. But the
Yeah.
services remain.
Service is coming in my next slide. So I thought you can read my next slide. Okay. So, मैं तो कम से कम 10 बार पूछ लिया आपके बारे में. Okay, so we have just started. So we are just doing a revision. Okay, now for sale of goods, the limit has increased from 20 to 40, and for services, it's gone up from 10 to 20. Okay, fine. Now, for providing services, there has been no change in the threshold limit for service providers. Persons providing services need to register if their aggregate turnover exceeds 20 lakhs or 10 lakhs. I mean, in normal states, it's 20 lakhs. In special category, it is 10 lakhs. So I'll just show you here. You should get, people can just focus here. So this is the first slide we started, okay, where we said the limit is 20 and 10 for goods and services. Earlier, the limit was 20 and 10, 20 for normal states, 10 for special category states. Then the limit has got changed for goods. It has become 40, okay, and become 20 for special category states, 40 for all other states, and 20 for hilly areas. Then the limit for service is same, 20 lakhs and 10 lakhs. Okay. Now important tax provision. Now the rate, GST rates, these are the main slab rates. So they are 5%, 12%, 18%, and 28%. These are the main slabs. Okay. We are not talking about the cess and 0 or 0.3% for gold and other things. So there's special category. So then we talk about input tax credit. Okay. Registered businesses can claim credit for GST paid on inputs used in production of goods or services. So there is a provision for claiming input credit. Okay. This helps to reduce the tax liability of the businesses and prevents the cascading effect of taxes. Of course, in earlier laws also there was some provisions where you were allowed to take input credit in SENVAT was there, service tax. So you could have take a credit for whatever, I mean, goods you are producing. And there was excise duty. Again, in excise duty there was a provision there. So now it has come under one, under the GST. Okay, and there is no leakage. Earlier there were some issues between, various kinds of indirect taxes. You are not allowed to take a credit for certain cases. So now then there was a provision which was, which is called the reverse charge mechanism. Okay, under the reverse charge mechanism, the recipient of goods or services is required to pay GST instead of supplier. Of course, this is limited to just few people. For example, advocates who are not registered. It is only applicable to unregistered people. If they are providing service to you, to a registered person, then that registered person has to deposit the GST in the government account. The unregistered person will not deposit that. Okay. So, like if you take a service of an advocate, for example, so and if you are a company, then you need to deposit the GST and not the lawyer himself. Okay, because he is unregistered. Then there is, a composition scheme. Small businesses with turnover of up to 1.5 crores can opt for composition scheme, which allows them to pay a fixed percentage of their turnover as a tax. So any person who is having a turnover of 1.5 crores or lower, he can opt for this scheme, which is called the composite scheme, where he can pay a certain less amount of tax. Then he will not be allowed as an input credit. In that case, he will lose the input tax credit. For example, like restaurants or cafes, so they charge 5%, and they are not allowed for input tax credit. So whatever ingredients they are using, and suppose they are paying tax on that, so they will not get input tax credit, but they will be charging only 5% to the customers. Okay. Advantage है कि because now there are certain people who don't want to, because they have to follow all the law. There are so many provisions and so many things, so it becomes a less of a, they can just do the business, by just deposit. Like suppose, my daughter-in-law is doing a business, so she deposits just 5%. That's all. End of the day, and she's not bothered about anything else. So she can file, quarterly returns, less, rigorous provisions under the GST. No, actually, one case I was just telling you, when GST was introduced, then all the restaurants, they were charging 18% tax. So it came in the media that the restaurant bills have become, eating outside become very costly. Immediately, what government did to save them, they brought it to 5%. But earlier they were charging 18% and they were allowed input tax credit. Okay. So now they are not allowed input tax credit, but they are charging only 5%. So customers are happy that they are paying only 5%. But actually, what happens is that whatever input tax credit is coming, whatever the tax they are paying on the ingredients they are using, for example, they're using groceries and anything. So whatever they are paying so that becomes the cost of their product. And that cost will reflect in the sale price of their goods to you. When you go to a restaurant, okay, so if he would have allowed an input tax credit, suppose his cost is suppose he's selling at 100. Now he has to sell at 110 because the 10 rupees he's paying becomes his cost. So then 110 plus the margin is going to charge from you. So in that case, the goods become costlier because that guy is losing the input tax credit. Okay, yeah. Yeah. No, it is two separate provisions. 40 lakhs, that is the registration criteria. Up to 40 lakhs, after 40 lakhs, you are entitled to register yourself. And before that, neither you raise an invoice, and that is absolutely, you are not paying any tax to the government. Now, in case if your sales have crossed 40 lakhs, but below 1.5 crores, you have to pay, lower tax rate. For example, restaurants have to pay 5%. Okay, so that's the difference. अब restaurants को 5% up to 40 लाख की सेल थी उसकी, तो he was not paying anything. He was not registered. Okay, but after 40 lakhs, he became under the ambit of GST, and he has, gone under the composite scheme. So means that he can now pay 5%, and he gets less. Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Sure. Yeah. So as we go along, when we do the provisions with regard to filing of returns, how many returns there are, about 3 returns per month. So that makes about, like 36 or something returns per annum. So those people, they can file only quarterly returns. So their workload goes down. Okay. Yeah. Yeah, they can, of course, but if it crosses 2 crores, then they come into the this thing and then they can't shift back. एक बार 1.5 करोड़ से ऊपर निकल गया, नहीं आ गया, नहीं वो कॉम्पोजिट स्कीम से निकल गए तो निकल गए फिर, इवन इफ योर टर्नओवर कम्स, इवन इफ यू, हाँ फिर अब वही है जो छोटे हैं, जो 50 लाख, 70 लाख, 80 लाख, 1 करोड़, 1.25 करोड़, so they know that their turnover is not never going to cross that much threshold. Okay, so for them it is. But if your sales are hovering between 2.5 crores to 1 crore, you can't opt for or composites. Yeah. Yeah. But in case if you cross 1.5 crores, then you get the benefit. You get the benefit of input tax credit. Okay, fine. So here you're not losing that. So you will not feel happy if you're if it as business grows, you are always happy. Only thing is that you have to comply more provisions. That's all. Okay, is that okay? Input tax credit. Okay, I'll explain that. Just hold. I'll explain that. Okay, I'll show you a live case. अभी हम दिखा रहे हैं आपको थोड़ी देर में. So just wait for that. Now there is something called electronic way bill. You know, to just it's an anti-evasion measure. It is a measure where the government wants there should not be any leakage. Okay, so they say that all the businesses have to raise a e-way bill with the help of the portal. Now you have to go to the GST portal. I tell you the portal also, and then raise an invoice from there. It's an electronic invoice. Raise it. Okay. So electronic way bill. I'm just covering all the provisions. So just please listen before asking any question. If it is not answered, please ask. GST Act requires the generation of an electronic e-way bill for movement of goods worth more than 50,000. First of all, the limit is 50,000. Okay, it's a general limit. Of course, there would be some categories where even it is below 50,000, they are supposed to raise the GWay bill. But 99% people who are invoicing below 50,000, okay, their invoice is below 50,000, then they don't have to raise an e-way bill. Okay, only if some bill crosses above 50,000, provision will be only applicable to that. Okay, okay, so that is there. For example, I'll just tell you. Recently, I got a call from my NRW accountant, who, I mean, where we have an association, and I was handling the accounts as well as I was the secretary. I just resigned. So he asked me that from October we have to issue e-way bill. Uh, Actually, there are two kind of categories. One is B2C, one is B2B. B2C is business to customer. Now, our 99% of billing is done B2C because we are billing only to residents. Okay, because we are claiming CAM charges from them and running the society. And there are about 1,200 houses, and out of that, at least 1150 houses are just consumers, B2C. But there are certain houses who are doing businesses. They have registered those places as their registered place of business. So that means if we have to raise an invoice to them, it becomes B2C category, B2B category. And if our turnover exceeds 5 crores, now the limit is if it exceeds 5 crores, then we have to raise e-way bill. And our turnover is more than 10 crores. That means in a per annum, we are raising invoices altogether, both exempted, non-exempted, is 10 crores. The CAM invoices which we are raising every year is, about 2.5 crores per quarter. So it comes to about 10 crores. So the provision became applicable to us. Okay. So he asked that I have to raise a e-way bill. So I said only you have to raise a e-way bill for those houses who have given you their GSTIN number. Okay. And we can raise only for them. It has to be raised from GST portal from 1st of October this year. Okay. So now there were some questions from our own people. We have a WhatsApp group where we have the president, secretary, treasurer. So he says that it is only applicable to B2C, B2B, okay, and not B2C. And where is B2B in our case? I said there are some 20 houses which are actually showing this as their business place. So it is applicable to them, and we have to raise a e-way bill. Is that clear? Services also, no? Goods and services we have. For both goods and services. Okay. So actually it is written goods here. That's why. So goods and services both become applicable for both. Yeah.
Next slide, it talks about place of origin, mode of transport. That's why the doubt is coming.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah. Yes, sir. Is the question related to e-way bill? अच्छा ठीक. If your turnover of your business exceeds 5 crores, अगर आपके बिजनेस की 5 करोड़ से ऊपर का टर्नओवर है पूरे साल की, in that case you have to raise a e-way bill for all the invoices which are above 50,000 threshold, and you are invoicing only to B2B customers. If you are invoicing B2C, that means customers who are not claiming input tax credit, they don't have the GST number. Okay, so for them you can raise the invoice without a e-way bill. Okay, अगर आपका कोई कस्टमर है जिसको कोई इनपुट क्रेडिट से लेना मतलब नहीं है, इज ओनली द फाइनल कंज्यूमर. Okay, so you can raise the bill without going to the GST portal. But if you are raising a bill to someone and he says, this is my GST number, I want an invoice, that means he is B2B. For that, any invoice above 50,000, you have to raise a e-way bill. Is that clear? Yeah. आपके इनपुट क्लेम करने से कोई लेना देना नहीं. रॉ मटेरियल से कोई नहीं. आप जब किसी को सेल करोगे तब ई वे बिल आता है. आप किसी से ले रहे हो तो फिर उसकी उसकी वो है, वो उसको ई वे बिल जनरेट करना पड़ेगा. व्हेन यू आर बाइंग समथिंग फ्रॉम समवन एंड टेकिंग इनपुट. या क्या उसने हाँ. So that's a very good question. That's a very good question, and it is going getting answered in my subsequent slides. When we look at returns, you know what kind of returns you are supposed to file. I'm just telling you a little bit pre-hand. You know, you have to file a monthly return. There are about two returns you have to file monthly. Okay, one is what was your sale and how much GST you have collected. The second return is a composite return which says what was your sale, what was the input tax credit for the invoices you got from others, and what is the net amount payable by you, and how much you have paid to the government, to GST authorities. There was one more return which has been abolished now, which was, you know, it was telling you that whatever, you know, bills you have, got and you have claimed the input credit, file a return for that also. Now that gets automatically populated now, because the person who is supplying to you, he is, you know, using your, he is taking your GST number and raising a bill on you. So you need not give that information to Government of India, to GST authorities. You will find when you go to the GST portal, all that information is available there. Okay, so in case if you find that you have got bills worth say something which is amounting to say 10 lakhs of GST, you have paid, you know, CGST of 10 lakhs or SGST of 10 lakhs or GST of 10 lakhs, but the portal is showing only 9 lakhs. Okay, so that means someone has not raised the invoice, proper invoice. It is not getting reflected in the portal. So you have to immediately, you know, talk to him and says, file it. Otherwise, I'm going to, you know, recover that amount from your next bill or whatever, if you have any chance of claiming it back. Because if he has not raised the invoice, it will not get automatically reflected in your return. आपने 10 लाख रुपए GST पे कर दिया, raw material pay, that should get reflected in your GST portal that you have paid 10 lakhs. You can claim the credit only what is showing in the GST portal. You can't deviate it. You can't say that I have paid 10 lakhs, but GST portal, which has automatically picked the information from my suppliers, is not matching. You have to do that reconciliation with your suppliers and say that, you know, they have to raise the bill so that there is no, you don't lose any input tax credit. Okay, so just hold on with that. अब आगे चलते हैं. Just आपका क्वेश्चन तो यही था कि आप किसी ने इनवॉइस रेज करा, उसने नहीं रेज करा, तो आपको उसका क्या फर्क पड़ेगा, यही था ना. हाँ अच्छा. हाँ, you should not bother about that. Normally, you should not bother about that. You should only bother about it when you see on the portal that whatever you have bought, are you getting that GST input? अगर आपको मिल रहा है, that's all. उसने आपसे 1 लाख रुपए का इनवॉइस रेज करा, उसके ऊपर उसने 18,000 रुपए GST लगा दिया. आपका वो 18,000 should get reflected in your GST portal that you have paid to him. If it is reflecting, it's none of your business to check whether he has raised the EA bill or not. He would have done all other formalities. Okay. अगर आपके पोर्टल पे आ गया कि आपको 18,000 का क्रेडिट मिल जाएगा गवर्नमेंट से, बिकॉज ही हैज आल्सो रेज्ड अ बिल एंड दैट इज गेटिंग इनटू योर अकाउंट, इट्स ऑल, दैट्स ऑल. Is that okay? Is that answers that question? आई थिंक दैट शुड हैव आंसर बिकॉज अब आपको तो मतलब था कि आपने जो जीएसटी पे करा उसका क्रेडिट आपको मिल रहा है नहीं मिल रहा वो मिल रहा है कि गवर्नमेंट ऑफ इंडिया ने उसके पोर्टल में वो दिख रहा है कि उसने आपके आपके बिहार पे 18,000 रुपए जमा कराया गवर्नमेंट को तो आप उसका इनपुट टैक्स क्रेडिट ले लोगे ओके ओके एवरीथिंग इट्स अ गुड्स एंड सर्विसेज एक्ट इट्स कॉल्ड सप्लाई नाउ. So there is no distinction of goods or services as far as the law is concerned. Of course, the provision may be, I mean, somewhat different for services. The limit is this, that, but it is a composite tax. Okay. अभी कोई सर्विस टैक्स तो रहा नहीं है ना तो एक्साइज राइट has become GST applicable for all goods and services. सर आप मुझे ना अपना नाम एड्रेस और पता जरूर देना बिकॉज आई एम गोइंग टू रेज एन इनवॉइस ऑन यू. Sorry, on a lighter side. Sorry, I'm really sorry if I am offended you. You're not liked my joke. अच्छा. सर ऐसा है अभी थोड़ी देर के लिए आप हो जाए आगे चलेंगे आपका आंसर मिल जाएगा आपको इसका. आई एम टेलिंग यू अदरवाइज यू नो वी विल बी जस्ट आंसरिंग वन क्वेश्चन एंड विल नॉट बी एबल टू कवर और कल आपका वो जीएसटी वो भी है क्विज भी है. हाँ सर ऐसा है अभी मैं आपको फ्राइडे में भी आपको मौका दूंगा आप क्वेश्चन पूछना जब अपने सारा जीएसटी कर लेना यू कैन जस्ट कीप योर क्वेश्चन रेडी एंड यू कैन आस्क मी एन आंसर. ओके सर सो डोंट वरी अबाउट आई विल आंसर ऑल योर क्वेश्चन विच आई कैन आंसर. जहां लगेगा ये मेरे एम्बिट से बाहर जा रहा है आई विल से आई विल गिव यू अ फोन नंबर इनसे पता कर लो फ्री सर्विस ही विल आंसर योर क्वेश्चंस ही विल नॉट चार्ज यू एनी मनी. ओके. इलेक्ट्रॉनिक ई-वे बिल. Okay, electronic e-way bill is a digital document that is generated online for the movement of goods worth more than 50,000 from one place to another. Okay, so this is something which I have already explained. Kanan sir, आप पढ़ सकते हैं इसको hurriedly.
An electronic e-way bill is a digital document that is generated online from movement of goods from one place to another within or across states in India. The e-way bill system was achieved to facilitate the seamless movement of goods across the country. The e-way bill contains details such as the name of the consignor and consignee, the value of goods, the origin and destination, and the mode of transport. It is generated from the GST portal to SMS and a unique e-way bill number is generated for each bill. The e-way bill number is valid for a specific period depending on the distance to be covered, time, and the use of transportation.
Okay, so the one feature is that you know it can be even I mean raised through an SMS. So, I mean, you have to register your mobile number on the portal under your registration. Then it will allow you to raise the e-way bill using your mobile. By sending an SMS to your portal, it can raise. So, wherever you are, it's not like you say that I was not in my office. You can always, I mean, raise the, you know, the invoice sitting at any place by sending an SMS. Now, how it is done? You have to just go to the portal and watch a video on YouTube where it has been given all how it is used. Okay. आगे सर.
The e-way system aims to curb tax evasion by ensuring that goods are not transported without necessary documentation and paper taxes. It helps in reducing the production of goods and ensures that there is no unnecessary delay or harassment during the movement of goods. The system has been designed to be user-friendly and can be accessed by taxpayers, transporters, and other stakeholders with ease.
So basically, the whole purpose was, you know, to make everything hassle-free. Time gets less consumed. There are no questions asked around various movement of goods. So e-way bill, you know, is there to provide you that benefit, and there is no leakage of revenue. But actually, it is the, you know, the limit earlier was only 500 crores for businesses who were, you know, above 500 crores. They were supposed to raise a e-way bill. Then it was brought down to 50 crores, then brought down to now 5 crores. So gradually they want that everybody should go for this. But the only thing is that only applicable for B2B. B2C, whereas there's a maximum chances of leakage, it's still a gray area there. Okay. So if you go to a supplier and say that I want, you know, send me a e-way bill, he will not be able because you are ultimate consumer. Okay. Fine. Now, under the GST in India, the following entities are exempt from raising e-way bill. So this is very important. Okay, very important from tomorrow's quiz. Okay,
Transport of goods.
transport of goods.
Transport of goods within a state where the total value of consignment does not exceed rupees 50,000.
So 50,000 is a limit. Okay, 50,000 से ऊपर होगा तो e-way bill होगा. Number one. Yeah.
Transport of specified goods such as fruits, vegetables, flowers, and unprocessed agricultural products, irrespective of the value of the consignment.
So these items are exempted from e-way bill. Okay.
Goods being transported from the customs port, airport, air cargo complex, or land customs to an inland container depot or a container station for clearance by customs.
So sometimes good moves from the customs to the inland this thing for bonding. Sometimes people want to bond the goods in a bonded warehouse, and they want to. Sometimes the purpose is that they don't want the material immediately, or they don't want to pay the custom duty. Okay, they don't have money, so they can bond it, and when they clear from the bonded warehouse, they will pay the custom duty and take the goods from there. So for that purpose, यहाँ पर e-way bill की जरूरत नहीं है. If it is moving to the bonded warehouse. Okay.
Goods being transported under the customs bond from an inland container depot or a container trade station to a customs port, airports, air cargo complex, or land customs.
So similarly, when you are exporting the goods are first moving to the bond and then moving to the custom authority. So in that case, there is no e-way bill required because this will be outside the purview of GST or maybe some other cases also. Okay.
Goods transported by non-motorized conveyance such as a bicycle or a handcart.
So when the goods are moving with on a bicycle or handcart, there is no need of e-way bill. Okay.
Goods transported from the place of business of the consignor or to the place of business of the transporter for transportation.
So if you are sending the goods, it has to be further transported. You are sending to the transporters go down, and from that the goods will be sent. So if it is moving to the transporter and for further transportation, then e-way bill is not required.
Transportation of empty cargo containers.
So similarly, transportation of empty.
Transportation of goods by rail, where the consignor of goods is the central government, state government, or local authority.
Okay, so if you are, it is a central government involvement, then there is no e-way bill.
Transportation of goods by rail, where the distance between the consignor and the consignee is more than 20 kilometers and the consignment value.
So this is basically, so again, this is self-explanatory. Okay.
Consignment transported by defense or paramilitary forces under specific circumstances.
So this may apply to basically for the goods which are moving from the armed forces under certain circumstances, they are also exempt from. So for understanding what are the specifics, you have to just go through the GST this thing and understand. So okay.
Important tax provisions of the GST Act in India. Anti-profiteering measures. The GST Act has anti-profiteering measures in place to ensure that business pass on benefits of reduced tax rate to the customers.
So that there is no, this thing. So the people, whatever tax you are paying, you are entitled for the input tax credit. So government has put some mechanism in place to see that all this can be, these are anti-profiteering measures. So I'll just take you this thing. These are the the key features of the anti-profiteering measures under the GST. So there is a national anti-profiteering authority is there. There is a complaint redressal mechanism is there. Time-bound investigations are there. Penalties and interest are there. So you can just go through all this without just academic in nature. So I'm just moving here again.
Important tax provisions of the GST Act in India. GST Council. The GST Council is responsible for making recommendations on issues related to the GST.
So the apex body is GST Council, who basically comprises of all the finance ministers of the state and the Indian finance minister, So they're part of the GST anyway. So this is called the negative list. So please pay attention; it's very important. Items that are not covered under the GST are called negative list. Also, these items are notified under the Schedule 3 of the GST Act. The following items are on the negative list. So this is very important to some of you. Okay. First is services by an employer to employee in course of relation to employment. Very normal. So if you are working as a salary employee, there is no GST. Though you are providing services to someone, but there is no GST. It's Schedule 3 item. services of funeral, or I mean, this thing services, burial services, sale of land. Okay, if you're purchasing a land or you're somebody selling the land, there is no GST. Okay, fine. Then sale of completed building. Now, this is a very important one. When you are buying a building from someone and it's a completed building and he's selling you and you're registering it in your name straight away, no GST. But in case if you're buying a flat which is under construction and you have entered into an agreement with either an authority or with a builder, then it comes under the GST bracket. Okay. So this, though it is not mentioned, but if it is suppose, what happens is a builder made a flat, a multi-storied flat, 6 houses, 6 flats. Okay. Some 4 people had entered into an agreement with him. Whatever money, he was collecting, it will come under the GST purview. Now 2 houses got made, fully made. There was no buyer. Then 2 people came and they said, we want to buy. So for those 2 people, there will be no GST because they are buying a completed building. The people who bought the building at the construction stage, so that's treated as a service under the GST Act. It's a supply. Is that clear? Beyond that, please don't ask any questions. For that, you have to go in more detail and understand it. So I'm just telling because I get so many questions from so many people. Okay, so this is there. So there, actionable claims other than lottery. Now, somebody will say, what is actionable claims? Examples of actionable claims: right to get back the purchase consideration when sale is set aside. Suppose you entered into an agreement with someone and you paid him 5 lakhs, and then, the whole deal was cancelled. You got the money back. So there is no GST on that. Logically, it should not be. So that is only the case. Okay. Services by any court or tribunal. The services of that, whatever they're charging for this thing, so there's no service. Functions performed by MP, MLAs, duties performed by person who holds any post pursuant to the provisions of Constitution in the capacity. So these are under the negative list. Okay. Now, what is a non-taxable supply? Sir, what do you?
Non-taxable supply means the supply of goods or services or both, which is not available to tax under the CGST Act or under IGST Act.
Okay, to cut short, there are the few items which are excluded from GST, like, alcohol, okay, for human consumptions, or petroleum, crude, high-speed diesel, motor spirit. So these are, non-taxable items. Okay. Okay, read further, sir.
It must be noted that the following items are not out of the scope of GST. However, the GST rate has not yet been announced or notified to them.
So, what government has done, government says that, petroleum crude, there is no tax. Though they have been brought under GST, but there is no tax. So, I mean, so that, whenever they are brought under GST, so it will become very simple for them to start, GST on these products. Similarly, all these things, okay, which are today out of the GST ambit, but government has put them under the GST Act. Only when they started, they will, put the rates for that. Now, there is something called TDS on GST. Okay, that means, like, when you're working with, I mean, as a salaried employee, your TDS is deducted from your income. Similarly, there is a TDS provisions under the GST, but it is only applicable to the government authorities. They can only deduct TDS, not for any other. Okay, so I'm just going to skip it. I'm just going to just show you that it is 2% TDS, which somebody is going to deduct. Maybe if you're doing some, business for a government authority, and they'll deduct that 2% from you, and you can claim that while you're making the payment. Okay, so I'm just leaving that provision. So only, a government of India, local body, municipal corporation, they only deduct that TDS. Okay, so I'm just leaving because there are some certain things which I have to spend a lot of time. Okay. Okay. So this is the most important. So I just wanted to be here. GST return is a form that a taxpayer registered under the Goods and Services Law must file uh, for every GSTIN registered. Okay, so these are the type of returns. So look at the returns first of all. So they are, GST return, GSTR 1, GSTR 2A, view only. So GSTR 1 you are supposed to file. GSTR 2A you can just only view. GSTR 2B you can only view. GSTR 3B you have to file. GST 4 is only for composite dealer. who has opted for 1.5 crore limit. So these are the kind of four kinds of returns. Okay, let's see one GST one. So please focus this. Otherwise, we'll carry on Monday. But there is no question on the quiz from here. So we can even if we cross the target, I think there will be no problem. GSTR one. हाँ जी, हाँ यहाँ से इसके आगे कोई क्वेश्चन नहीं आएगा प्लीज. सो रिलैक्स. बट ये सबसे ज्यादा इंपॉर्टेंट है. हाँ तो हम ऐसा कर सकते हैं क्योंकि यहां नहीं वो फिर आपकी दो स्लाइड्स और भी जो मैंने पहले दी आपको. हाँ वो भी है और ये है. सो डू यू वांट शुड आई कंटिन्यू और शुड आई स्पिल इट ऑन द नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे. नेक्स्ट फ्राइडे करते हैं बड़ा इंपॉर्टेंट. Okay, just GSTR number one, and then I'll explain it more detail the next time. Okay, fine. GSTR one is a monthly, quarterly return that summarizes all the sales, output supplies of a taxer. So this is basically the first return जो आपने सेल करी है. ओके, इट्स अ समरी ऑफ दैट. जैसे मैंने आपको दिखाया था जो पहला था आउटपुट में व्हाट इज योर टैक्सेबल सेल, व्हाट इज नॉन टैक्सेबल सेल, हेड वाइज, नॉट दैट यू हैव टू गिव इट विला वाइज और दिस थिंग. सो इनवॉइस वाइज नहीं देनी, आपको समरी देनी है. जीएसटीआर वन इज अ मंथली क्वार्टरली रिटर्न. इट्स अ मंथली और अ क्वार्टरली रिटर्न. फॉर मोस्ट ऑफ द पीपल इट्स अ मंथली, but for certain section of people like composite dealer or for small people it becomes quarterly. Okay, so this is the first, this is your turnover. Okay, under GST Act sir padhiye.
Under the GST Act, every normal taxable person has to file GSTR1 with a detail of the outward supply of goods or services. It will also include details of debit or credit note related to the outward supply of goods or services of the previous month. This form will also include details of the export and exempted supply of goods and services.
So this will contain everything: exempted sales, non-exempted sales, your credit notes, debit notes. You can raise credit note and debit note. Give an example. हाँ वो तो चलेगा, ये तो सिर्फ डोंट वरी, अभी आप डोंट हैव टू फाइल अ रिटर्न. ओनली व्हेन यू आर सपोज टू फाइल अ रिटर्न एटलीस्ट यू शुड नो इट ना. अब बिजनेस तो आगे बढ़ाना ही आपने, ये तो है नहीं कि 40 लाख से नीचे बैठे दोगे. ओके, सो जीएसटीआर, who is required to file GSTR? Yeah, just understand.
Every person who has done their GST registration
Yeah.
should file this return except the person registered under composition scheme, non-resident taxpayers, e-commerce aggregator, or marketplace and foreign diplomats.
So basically, those people who have got themselves registered. So if you feel that there is no registration requirement, you don't have to file. Okay, except for the person registered under the composite scheme. So composite scheme वालों को ये फाइल करने की जरूरत नहीं होती है. जो 1.5 करोड़ से नीचे करके उन्होंने composite ली हुई है, they don't have to file. Okay, and for certain more people. Okay, input service tax distributor. Okay, anyway, deadline for filing.
Filing date one is currently as follows: monthly by 11th of every month. If the business either has an annual aggregate turnover of more than rupees 5 crores or has not opted into
which is the quarterly scheme. Okay, आगे.
quarterly by 13th of the month following every quarter if the business has opted into the QIP scheme.
So basically, if you've gone for the quarterly this thing that you're going to make a quarterly payment of file returns, so in that case, the last date is 13th. Otherwise, the date is 11th. Okay.
So this choice is by us, quarterly and monthly.
Yeah. नहीं, मैं quarterly ये नहीं कि आप अपनी choice कर ली कि मैं quarterly करूँगा. Only when you are applicable under the quarterly. Like suppose you are a composite dealer, फिर तो आपको quarterly करनी है. और भी आप देखते हैं. हाँ, आगे.
The due dates of GST1 are based on your aggregate turnover. Businesses with sales above rupees 5 crore have an option to file quarterly return under the QIP scheme until the 13th of the month following the relevant quarter.
So if your turnover is below 5 crores, then you can opt for quarterly. You are a composite, customer, you opted for a composite scheme, or your turnover is below 5 crores, then the option is given to file the return on 13th. Otherwise, it has to be filed on 11th.
Whereas those taxpayers do not opt for the QIP scheme or have a total turnover of above rupees 5 crore must file the return every month on or before the 11th of the next month.
Is that okay? So the people who have a turnover of above 5 crores, they have to file on 11th of the next month. Okay. GSTR 2. Now, this is the return which was earlier there. Now it is having no meaning, but we must go through.
GSTR2 is a monthly return that allows the taxpayer to declare and summarize the details of inward purchases of taxable goods and or services.
Hold on. So that means whatever you have bought and you have paid GST on that. So earlier you were filing a return which is called GSTR2. यू आर गिविंग द इन्फॉर्मेशन कि ये मैंने सामान खरीदा है और इसके ऊपर इतना जीएसटी पे करा है, आप फाइल कर दीजिए, बट नाउ यू कांट फाइल दैट। आगे
However, the GSTR 2 form is currently suspended since September 17 through amendment to the CGST rules. In its place, GSTR 3 Bravo, which is a return in a combined version of GSTR 2 and GSTR 3, is in use.
so now you have to file only a GSTR 3B, which is a combined version of GSTR 1 and 2, वेयर यू नो आपने जो हमने दिखाया था, मैंने आपको दिखाया था एक्सेल शीट में कि आपने जितना जीएसटी पे करा, कितना इनपुट है, दैट्स अ कॉम्बिनेशन, दैट इज नथिंग बट जीएसटीआर 3 रिटर्न। ओके फाइन, विच टॉक्स अबाउट हाउ मच यू हैव कलेक्टेड फ्रॉम कस्टमर्स, हाउ मच यू हैव पेड एज इनपुट क्रेडिट एंड व्हाट इज द बैलेंस पेबल अलोंग विद लेट इंटरेस्ट एंड पेनल्टी। सो वो है जीएसटीआर 3 आपकी, उसकी मोटी मोटी फॉर्मेट वही है। ओके
Until August 17, every registered taxable person under GST was required to give details of inward supplies, that is purchases, and input tax credit for every tax period in the form of GSTR 2. GSTR 2 contains details of all the purchases, transactions of a registered dealer for a month.
Okay, just hold on. So this is GST2 has been abolished now, but it was only carrying your input credit details, okay, which you are not supposed to file now, okay. Okay. Now, what is a buyer-seller reconciliation? So that becomes now very important. Okay.
Buyer-seller reconciliation or invoice matching, or is a process of matching taxable sales by the seller with the taxable purchases of the buyer. It is vital because ITC on purchases will not be available if the details of purchases filed in GSTR 2, currently GSTR 3B, return or of buyer matches with the details of sales filed in GSTR 1 of their seller.
So, you know, now you don't have to file the GSTR2. So, whatever input tax credit you have to take, that will get automatically populated and you have to see that it matches. So, it's coming now in the next thing. Reconciliation. For example, let's say what is reconciliation?
For example, Ajay buys 100 pens worth rupees 500 from Vijay Station. Vijay Station must show rupees 500 sale in his GSTR 1. Ajay must show the same rupees 500 purchase in GSTR now 3B to claim ITC. Unless the amounts match, Ajay will not be able to claim ITC.
Okay, fine.
The liability on Akhil. So in case the Vijay Stationery doesn't file his
So, you know, you have to see that, you know, that I mean, you can claim only the input tax credit if he has filed the return. Okay, if he has not filed it, then your input tax credit is lost. So either you can do two things: don't buy anything from that person again. Second, ask him to file the return. Otherwise, if you have some kind of a, you know, money receivable given to him, you can deduct that money from him if there is any account with you.
But then that, if there would have been an official transaction, there would be a bill, sir.
Yeah.
So that proof of transaction.
That you can go to always court of law. That you know door is always open. Okay.
Most of the headings under GSTR 2 are auto-populated from counterparties GSTR 1, so it would have revolved minimal time.
So that means it get automatic populated, okay, from because everybody is filing GSTR1. So your supplier is also filing, you are also filing. So that information is coming from that your supplier. Okay.
Is this still valid, sir? GSTR 2?
हाँ, अब तो नई आ गई है. This is the new one, okay.
GSTR 2A is a view-only dynamic GST return relevant for the recipient or buyer of goods and services. It contains the details of all inward supplies of goods and services, that is purchases made from GST registered suppliers during the tax period. The data is auto-populated based on data filed by the corresponding supplier in their GSTR 1 returns. Further, data filed in the invoice furnishing facility by the QRMP taxpayer also gets auto-populated.
So from wherever source you are buying, this GSTR2A, which will be shown in your under your own registration, this thing, when you go, you will find जहां जहां से आपने खरीदा है, उसका auto populate होके आ जाएगा. Okay, last.
And that goes automatically to 3B also.
हाँ 3B तो आपको फाइल करनी है, तो आपको वो डेटा वहां से ऑटो पॉपुलेट आ जाएगा, उससे ज्यादा तो आप क्लेम नहीं कर सकते. ओके.
Since GSTR 2A is a read-only return, no action can be taken in it. However, it is referred by the buyers to claim an accurate input tax credit for every financial year across multiple tax periods. In case any invoice is missing, the buyer can communicate with the seller to upload it in the GSTR 1 on a timely basis. It was used frequently for claiming ITC for every tax period until August 2020. Thereafter, the buyers are required to refer to the GSTR 2 Bravo, a static return, to claim the input tax credit for every tax period. However, some taxpayers still find referring to the GSTR 2 beneficial at the time of filing the.
So now we have another, GSTR2B, which is the final this thing, okay? But people can always fall back on GSTR2A, okay?
The GSTR 2B is again a view-only static GST return important for the recipient or buyer of goods and services. It is available every month starting in August 20 and contains constant ITC data for a period whenever checked back.
So you can just browse back, okay? आपको इस महीने में नहीं मिल रहा, पिछले महीने में देखो, पिछले महीने, you can always, it's a complete trail. वो जो थी उस पर्टिकुलर मंथ की थी A. Now this is going to give you a full trail. You can always go and forth and this thing and see, okay?
ITC details will be covered from the date of filing GSTR 1 for the preceding month, M1, up to the date of filing GSTR 1 for the current month, M. The return is made of every month, sufficient time before filing GSTR in RAO, where the ITC is declared.
So this is you giving up.
GSTR 3 uses monthly self-declaration to be filed for furnishing summarized details of all outward supplies made, input tax credits made, tax liability asserted, and
Yeah.
tax.
So this is what I have shown you, Excel sheet. GSTR 3B is a monthly self-declaration to be filed for furnishing summarized details of all output supplies made, input tax credit claimed, tax liability ascertained, and tax paid. So this is the one. Okay. So that you can. बाकी थोड़े बहुत है. We will cover in the next this thing. Okay. So we just call it. But we have covered mostly everything.